Welcome in to Run the League. It is week 10 of the NFL season, and let's get into some stardom sit-em so you can win this week. Week 10 NFL season. Let's do this. All right. Welcome in. Let's start with the quarterback position this week. So my starts this week, I really like Matt Ryan versus the Dallas Cowboys, and I really like Carson Wentz versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both guys are trending really well right now. They're going in the right direction, and they're guys who I think you can find off the waiver wire who can really help you this week. And I mean, they're going to be pretty good starts as well. Both could finish inside the top 10. But my start of the week this week at the quarterback position is actually Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. They take on the Saints this week, and the Saints have a great run defense, but they've been very susceptible to giving up huge plays in the passing game. I think this is a week where A.J. Brown and Julio Jones potentially have those monster weeks you've been looking for, and therefore Ryan Tannehill should be a great option this week as a start candidate. My sits this week, I'm very concerned about Russell Wilson going on the road to take on the Green Bay Packers. So Russ has been out for quite a few weeks. We don't even know if he's going to play, but if he does, it just feels like a really tough spot to kind of throw him back into the action, especially after the Packers looked really good defensively against the Chiefs a weekend ago. So I'd be a little concerned about playing Russell Wilson this week. Baker Mayfield taking on the New England Patriots. He's another guy that I'm just not very high on this week, even when his team dominates. And he has an awesome performance, and you look up and you say, man, Baker Mayfield has just been terrific. He still somehow can't find a way to finish inside the top 10 quarterbacks. He finished at quarterback 11 this week, despite his team absolutely blowing out the Bengals this past week. It's just what can happen because they have a run-first offense. The top guy that I'm worried about this week, again, this part of the show is all about guys who you're going to start most likely. They are usually locks to your lineup, but I just have concerns. So the top guy I'm worried about this week is Jalen Hurts. He takes on the Broncos this week. The Broncos have been giving up a ton of points in the run game, but not as much in the pass game. And Jalen Hurts, this Eagles team has changed. They're running the ball a lot more because they've been in closer games. And I think against the Broncos, they'll be in this game, and therefore it's going to hurt Jalen Hurts a little bit. So I'm concerned. I think this game could go in a bad direction for him once again, and he could end up outside the top 10, which is starting to become a little bit of a concerning trend for Jalen Hurts, even though his team is playing a lot better. Moving on to the running back position, these are interesting names that I have this week because they're guys that I think you could either find on the waiver wire or guys who you could easily trade for that I think could have huge weeks for you. So the first one is Devonta Freeman for the Ravens. He takes on the Dolphins this week, and the Dolphins have been absolutely dreadful at stopping the run. And because of that, I'm very intrigued by playing Devonta Freeman. He's finished inside the top 23 3 straight weeks, and he was a top 10 running back this past weekend against the Minnesota Vikings. The Dolphins have a worse run defense than the other two, so I think he's going to have a great week this week for the Ravens. The other running back that I like is J.D. McKissic taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a great matchup for pass-catching running backs, a bad matchup for guys who don't catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. J.D. McKissic is the pass catcher for the Washington football team. I'm expecting a big week from him, and I'll get to his running mate, Antonio Gibson, here in a minute because he's going to be in my sits just because I think this is a perfect matchup for McKissic and a terrible matchup for Gibson. My start of the week this week, and this is one, usually when I do starts of the week or my starts, I talk about guys who you aren't normally going to either you have a decision to make. Let's just say that. You're not going to bench the top guys, and this start of the week is not a guy that you're going to bench, but I think it's a guy that you can finally put all of your confidence back in, and that's Christian McCaffrey. He had a mediocre week a week ago, his first game back from the hamstring injury. Got a lot of touches, though. Got a lot of carries, showed himself to be healthy, and I think this week is where you get an RB1 finish, the RB1 finish from Christian McCaffrey. That's my bet this week, is that he will finish the RB1. Moving on to my sits this week, James Robinson, the Jaguars running back. He takes on the Colts this week, and this is his first game back from that injury that he suffered a week ago. The Colts have a really good run defense. I'm concerned about this matchup, and I think if he doesn't get the targets in the pass game, then I think it's going to be really hard for him to have significant fantasy value this week. My other sit this week, Antonio Gibson taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mentioned why I wouldn't play him this week. He's the bell cow. He's their workhorse, and Tampa Bay does not allow workhorses to really do a whole lot unless you're a pass catcher, which Gibson really has not been throughout his career so far. My other sit this week is Damian Harris taking on the Cleveland Browns. First of all, he might not play this week. Second of all, I think it's a really tough matchup. I don't think New England's going to have a ton of success against Cleveland this week. So Damian Harris is a guy that I'm trying to stay away from. And obviously, if he's hurt, you're not going to play him. My top guy that I'm worried about, this is an interesting one, and I've never done this before. But of the top 10 running backs, I am not concerned about any of them. I think this is a huge week. If you have those top 10 guys, so whether it's Dalvin Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, Zeke, I'm not concerned about any. They all have great matchups, and that's really encouraging. I think this week could be a very high-scoring week because of the running back production that we're going to see across fantasy football in these matchups. Moving on to the wide receiver position, my starts this week, I really like Mike Williams to have a bounce back against the Vikings. He has been very disappointing. He had 2 catches for 58 yards this past week, has been outside the wide receiver 4 the past 3 weeks. He just has really struggled to get anything going. I think this is finally a good matchup for him against the Vikings. I'm expecting big things from Mike Williams as he is really becoming a guy who, when he has bad weeks, they're terrible weeks, and when he has good weeks, they're absolutely league-winning weeks. So we'll see where Mike Williams trends this week, but I have a feeling it's going to be a very good trend. My other start this week, Jalen Waddle taking on the Ravens. Waddle continues to impress me. He's become a target hog in the Dolphins' offense. Devontae Parker is going to miss a few weeks, and therefore Jalen Waddle is going to continue to get a ton of targets. So since week 6, of the fantasy football season, he has had 13, 8, 11, and 10 targets. That is elite production. That's elite value, elite targets. And now all you need is, if he scores touchdowns, he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver every single week. That makes him a very intriguing start week after week. I also really like Jerry Jeudy taking on the Eagles. He continues to look healthier, looked really good against the Cowboys this week, despite being on a little bit of a snap count still. I think that changes against the Eagles this week, a team that gave up a ton of yards and touchdowns to Justin Herbert. I think Teddy Bridgewater will continue to find Jerry Jeudy, and Jeudy will continue to ascend into being the top wide receiver option for the Denver Broncos. My start of the week this week, though, is Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver for the Washington football team. It's been a roller coaster type year for Terry. Scary Terry was a guy who a lot of people thought could be the breakout. Be a top 6 wide receiver by the end of the year. That has not happened. But I think against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he'll have one of those big weeks as they're going to have to play catch-up against Tampa Bay, and I really like Terry McLaurin in that matchup. My sits this week, not a huge fan of Courtland Sutton against the Eagles. As we saw for the Chargers, the Eagles were able to take away Mike Williams because they had Darius Slay in shadow coverage. I think they're going to do that again to Courtland Sutton. Therefore, I prefer Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy this week, along with the running backs for the Broncos offense. I also don't like Jarvis Landry against the New England Patriots. Baker had a great week. The Bengals got destroyed by the Browns, and Jarvis still did not have a good week. That makes me very concerned. Even without Odell Beckham there, the targets just don't seem to be consistent to anyone in this offense. Top guys that I'm worried about, I mentioned Russell Wilson as a guy that I'm concerned about playing this week, that I'm probably sitting this week in his first game back against the Packers. That makes me equally concerned for Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Each one has had a pretty good performance with Geno Smith, and each one has had a complete bust with Geno Smith. And even with Russell Wilson back, it's just a very tough matchup. They might even be introducing Odell Beckham Jr. to the lineup as well, as the Seahawks are rumored to be in it for OBJ. So yeah, lots of concerns here. I'm just going to try my best to stay away, but obviously Lockett and DK are guys that you probably spent a lot of draft capital on. Specifically DK, you probably have to play him and just take the results. At the tight end position, my starts this week, I really like Pat Freiermuth against the Detroit Lions. I think he's a nice streaming option. And my start of the week this week at the tight end position is Dan Arnold versus the Indianapolis Colts. Colts have been giving up a ton of production in the passing game. Dan Arnold is a target hog. I think he'll continue to get tons of targets in this offense from Trevor Lawrence. My sit this week is Jared Cook, the tight end for the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are just simply playing too many tight ends. They've been playing Jared Cook and Darnell Parham a ton, but then they also played Steven Anderson this past week, and that's just terrible. They have 3 tight ends with production. That makes me out on Jared Cook. So that is all the starts. That's all the sits this week on Run the League. Hopefully, you're able to turn your season around and get a big win this week. I had a absolutely crazy experience on Monday Night Football where I needed Pat Freiermuth to outscore Najee Harris. Impossible, right? I thought so, but it happened. And I was able to get a huge win. Hopefully, many of y'all were able to get wins this past week as well. And hopefully the streak continues. And if you're at the top of the league, continue to make moves. You know, I offered a trade to one of the top guys in our league, and he told me, I'm number 1 in our league. I'm not making trades. And I mean, that's all great, and that's a good theory because you feel like your team's loaded, but there's always a chance to get better. And so don't forget that if you're in the lead, and if you're not in the lead, if you're one of the lower teams in the league, don't give up yet. There's still time to make a move and continue to progress in your league. Look to make a trade. Maybe sacrifice some pieces to try to get a big-time option to put in your lineup, or just maybe pivot. Maybe you have guys that aren't producing well for you and you need to pivot in a different direction, even if the name value isn't great. Try to make that trade. Try to get your team better and try to win this week in fantasy football. So, for Grayson Grunefer, this has been Run the League on NFL on 365 Sports.